Good morning, nerd fighters. Last time at the end of my video, I promised you guys some book recommendations. In my last video and on my blog, which is at alexandrakingsley.com, I talked about Zelda Fitzgerald a little bit, and Zelda is sort of tragically unappreciated in literary history and literary criticism. She's obviously overshadowed by Fitzgerald's legacy and his popularity in his day and after his death. But her writing is actually really cool as well. She didn't do a whole lot, but what she did has been collected in the collected writings of Zelda Fitzgerald. This probably is the most bang for your buck if you're gonna just get a book. I actually got this one from the library. She has her novel that she wrote, which is called Save Me the Waltz, and then she has a bunch of articles that she did for magazines and things like that, including the eulogy on the flapper, which I just think is a fantastic little article. Zelda was known as being a, sort of the flapper, the muse for the writers of the Jazz Age who were writing about flappers, including Fitzgerald. And so she wrote this thing about how the flapper was dead. She writes really interestingly about youth, which is something that Fitzgerald, I think, also is sort of known for. In her article, The Eulogy on the Flapper, she writes, "I see no logical reasons for keeping the young illusioned. Certainly disillusionment comes easier at 20 than at 40. The fundamental and inevitable disillusionments, I mean." All of these books sort of have youth in common. The Jazz Age was a time when youth culture was on the rise, and everybody was thinking about what it was like to be young. And so all of these books, I think, have really interesting ways of talking about being young. If you're maybe sort of interested in seeing what else was going on in the Jazz Age, I would highly, highly, highly recommend this book, which is Gentlemen Prefer Blondes by Anita Loos, and if you buy it in this Penguin edition, it also contains the sequel to the book, which is But Gentlemen Marry Brunettes. Gentlemen Prefer Blondes was made into an extremely popular and really good movie with Marilyn Monroe, and Marilyn Monroe is sort of perfect for the Lorelei Lee character. Lorelei is the quintessential flapper who, appears to be very, very unintelligent, but is actually sort of working the system in this wonderful way. This book has a lot of really interesting things to say about what it is to be female in the Jazz Age, and even female just in society in general. It's played more for laughs than something like The Great Gatsby is, but I think that this also is a really good sort of illustration of what Daisy means when she says that she wishes her daughter would be a beautiful little fool, and you get to see Lorelei Lee sort of take that identity of fool and play everyone with it in this really terrific and witty and hilarious way. I do highly recommend checking out the movie version. Marilyn Monroe, like I said, I think Marilyn Monroe built her career on playing a little dumber than she was and sort of being the wide-eyed, innocent ingenue, which is perfect for Lorelei Lee. I don't think you could have cast it better, and that is sort of a classic of 50s Hollywood cinema. Also want to recommend, for sort of a different perspective on the whole deal, Nella Larsen's Passing, which is it was written 4 years after The Great Gatsby, so 1929. Nella Larsen was an African-American writer. She participated in the Harlem Renaissance, and Passing is a book about two African-American women who are light-skinned enough to pass for white. They know each other when they're young, and then they grow up and go their separate ways, but they reconnect, and one of them has spent her entire life since teenagerhood passing as white, and has actually married an incredibly scary, racist white man, and is sort of just pulling one over on the whole world. She meets up with her friend who can pass for white but hasn't been passing for white, and starts to party in Harlem and sort of push the boundaries of what she can do without being caught by her husband. This book is suspenseful and beautiful, and it examines what's going on with women in the time from a whole different perspective, including the racial aspects of what's going on. So this one is highly, highly recommended also. The last one I don't have a copy of because I read it from the library, but it's Walker Percy's The Moviegoer. That is sort of a different version of The Great Gatsby, of the disaffected romantic young hero, except that it's set in Louisiana. instead of being set on the East Coast. To me, it was really interesting because you get to see sort of a different regional perspective on what life at that time was like. Percy is an incredibly witty and affecting author. He totally does justice to sort of the themes and the ideas that Fitzgerald was playing with. And I don't even know what to say about the book other than it's Southern. I think it's a good antidote to the you know, East Coast New York elitism that happens sometimes in Fitzgerald's writing and sort of in the literary world in general. I don't have the copy of the book, but I looked at my favorite quote from the book, and I'm going to read it to you guys. "He's quite a guy," Joel told me. "Do you know what he told me after lying under a cliff for 36 hours with 2 inches of his femur sticking out? He said, 'Queenie, I think I'm going to pass out, and before I do, I'm going to give you a piece of advice. God, I thought he was going to die and knew and was telling me what to do with his book. And he said quite solemnly, 'Queenie, always stick to Bach and the early Italians,' and passed out cold as a mackerel. And by God, it's not bad advice." So you can get a little bit of the wit of Percy there. It's a lot of fun, and it has sort of not an overweening, cliched Southern tone to it, but it just feels very real. And Louisiana feels very beautiful, and there's a lot of contemplation of religion and the different ways that Louisiana and Creole culture have affected the people who grew up there and stuff. Those are my book recommendations for you guys. Let me know in the comments if you have any book recommendations, things that I didn't mention from the Jazz Age that you think are worthwhile, and I'll see you guys next time.